from your service record, I guess, the Silver Star, is that from?
That's from Somalia, yeah. Just got upgraded. Hey, I really want to say this. The movie, I think, wrongly downplayed those 4 SEALs roles in Somalia. They kind of showed them as being stuck out in the city streets and not really having much of a role to play, man. The SEALs that were right next to me on those Humvees were absolutely awesome, and they don't get the airtime. There were some Air Force CCT guys and PJs around me that don't get the airtime, and the movie should have depicted them, and it didn't. And I'm bummed that those guys didn't get the credit that they deserve.
Yeah. I can only imagine, I mean, no different, something as simple as conducting this interview, like there's just not enough time to cover everything, and so there's always going to be shit that gets
But it
left
almost
out,
makes it look like what they did is unimportant.
Yeah.
And all of us that were there would say, man, those dudes were amazing.
Yeah. In speaking to the underplaying of the amount of violence and killing, specifically as it relates to, the civilian body count, or I guess just in general, is there a way to quantify or put a number on, even if it's ballparking, a range for that matter, of about how many KIA on the other side there was?
International Red Cross rolled in and kind of put some estimates out. So just to give your viewers kind of a perspective, we put about 200 guys in the city, 200 shooters in the city streets that day. The next morning, 18 dead, 73 wounded, roughly half the force shot or killed or wounded. But the International Red Cross says we killed at least 300, wounded somewhere between 8 and 1,100 more. That's their best guess. But no one, the international community, even our intelligence assets, couldn't give us accurate numbers. I think most of us who went in on the target that day thought there'll be a couple of hundred bad guys, 200 of us against 300, 500, maybe 1,000. When we came out, I think most of us would say, I think we were talking more in the range of 10 to 20,000, not 100 to 200, more like 10 to 20,000. So you know the deal, man. When you do that kind of math, you're going to get doesn't matter what your tactics and your equipment is, you're going to get the same results with that kind of math every time.
Yeah. I mean, is it safe to say from your perspective of being on the ground, one of the only guys that was on the ground the whole time, that there's probably thousands of KIAs?
Yeah, the amount of killing that we did compared to the damage that they did. Let's be honest, man. They did real damage to us, and we're really, really well trained. But the amount of damage that we did to them far exceeds it. And most of the most significant killing was done from the air by the little birds. Yeah. And those dudes, all night long, their guns were just red hot all night long, keeping the rest of the city at bay while we were in there trying to fight our way to those 2 crash sites.
Yeah. Wow, man, what a story. I mean, it's been told. I've seen the movie, I've read the book, but getting the in-person account from you is special, man. I appreciate it.
I can't say enough about those pilots too, man. Some of those dudes flew for 18 hours nonstop, putting rounds on the enemy, just trying to keep them at bay.
Yeah. An incredible story. Man, I can't thank you enough for sharing it. It's awesome.
Yeah, brother.
All right, so when you... I'm curious. I mean, does the movie do a good job at the after of what it was like that next morning? Like once it's all over and you're legitimately done. Like the adrenaline dump, the emotions. Walk us through that.
There's a couple of things that I don't think I was, and I've already been to combat twice before Somalia, but the next day we're all at the Pakistani stadium. There's a soccer stadium that's controlled by the Pakistanis. That's the closest UN place to us from where the fight went down. And we all descend on the Pakistani stadium. And now the field of the Pakistani stadium is just nothing but bodies. And I mean legit bodies everywhere. There are stretchers over here with dudes that are just hanging on to life. There's stretchers over here of dudes that have an arm or a leg, but we know they're going to make it. The body bags are lined up over here. And then we're all trying to figure out, wait a second, what about X? What about Y? What about Z? Where's Shugart? Where's Gordon? Where's Ray Frank? Where's Mike Durant? Like, we got some people missing. That part spread like wildfire through the Pakistani stadium. And that was my first chance to ever, that's when the adrenaline stopped flowing. That's when I was finally able to say, okay, maybe I'm going to walk out of this city streets alive today. And I became numb, and I mean like totally numb. I'm looking at the body bags that are stacked up over here. I'm looking at the dudes that are bleeding out on the stretcher right here, and I got nothing. No emotion whatsoever. And I think I was just so exhausted, both physically exhausted and emotionally exhausted, that I didn't have anything left in the tank until a couple of hours later, when I was able to get just an hour or two of rack where I could start to process what I just went through.
Yeah.
It kind of surprised me because I'm sitting on the hood of my Humvee with run flat in the tires, and 3 of the 4 tires are shot flat. Like, wow, man, those things are not supposed to go flat. That's a lot of bullets.
Yeah.
But I had trouble kind of attaching the emotion to the event until a couple of hours later.
Yeah. I have a dumb question.
I don't think there is such a thing. Go for it, man.
Maybe that sounds like a challenge. Throughout the entire 18 hours, you drank water.
Yeah.
Did you eat anything?
No. Copenhagen.
Did you go to the bathroom at all?
I did. I'd run out of the Humvee, go run to the vehicle or to the side of the building next to me. The gunfire picks up, and I was like, "They're trying to kill me while I'm going to the bathroom out here, man. These guys are insane."
Yeah, because that's a long gunfight.
It is.
Nothing I went through was ever anywhere near that long.
I always thought, well, the sheer adrenaline will keep you awake. At 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm droning while bullets are still flying and landing next to me because I'm so exhausted.
Yeah. That was one of the things, about being in Iraq that I think, like, from an adrenal fatigue standpoint is so tough is that, like, you can only do that for so long.
And your body can't live on that.
Especially when it's week after week after week. It's just like, you get to where it's like you crawl under a fucking Humvee while shit's going on. Right. It's like, whatever, it's weird. Man, it's such a crazy story. How long did you guys stay there after it was done before you came home?
So the hardest day of my life, militarily speaking, is about a week later. We've negotiated, there's been an intermediary there. It's went through the International Red Cross, negotiated to get the bodies back that were being drugged through the streets. We've got Mike Durant back, who was held prisoner of war for 11 days, and we're ready to roll back out in the city streets and continue the mission, right? Like, you sent us over here to find some bad guys. We're here to kill or to capture them. Okay, well, let's go. And the President of the United States makes the call, stop all combat operations, period. Put the task force back on aircraft and send them back to the United States. And by the way, we're reversing course in Somalia, changing the policy and pulling everybody out by March of the next year. And immediately I thought, what was all that blood for? Like, if we're here to do a mission, I will fight to the last man. I will gladly give my life if this mission is that important. You're the president. You decide if it's that important. But if you're going to reverse course just because we lost a whole bunch of dudes last night, you just dishonored all of the dudes who just gave their life last night. And for me, the ultimate slap in the face is when the president said, pack your stuff and get out of here. It really wasn't that big of a deal in the first place.
Man. I can only assume.
And I'll carry that bitterness. Like, people got angry about way things went down in Afghanistan. I'm like, you don't even know, man. That bitterness, I don't want to say bitterness, that bitter pill, I'm going to carry with me for a long, long time.
Yeah. I can only assume that everybody shared that same sentiment. Yeah.
But all of us also said, hey, look, boss, you're the president. If it's that important, we will go to our death for this mission if that's what you want us to do. But don't you dare pull us out early, man.
Yeah, man.
And I got to give credit to all of those presidents that hung in there in Afghanistan and Iraq when the rest of the nation was saying, look, let's just get out of here. It's not that big of a deal. No, man, if it's worth fighting for, it's worth winning.
Yeah. To me, I think that underscores that principle needs to be at the forefront prior to involvement.
Yeah. That needs to be at the forefront of U.S. foreign policy. Like, if we're about to do this, we're going to stick with it until we win.
But on the other side of that token, don't do it unless it's worth dedicating that.
That's right.
Man. So how long were you there? Like, once the combat subsided, a week?
We were maybe a week and a half before we were pulled out of there and sent back to the States. Wow.
So you come home, then what?
I stuck around the Ranger Regiment. Most 95% of the dudes that survived, they punched out of the Army. Few of them went on to bigger and better things. I stuck around the Ranger Regiment, stayed there for several more years. But I had this moment where I had this overwhelming sense that God wanted me to be in the ministry. That's what led me to become an Army chaplain.
Before you did that, when you first got back to the Ranger Regiment, What was that like as far as like all the other dudes that see you guys coming home? Was it like now you're Ozzy Osbourne on tour? Like
it was the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah. The news portrayed Black Hawk Down as an absolute military disaster. And all they showed was bodies dragged through the streets and a lot of blood. And so even the guys from my unit that didn't deploy, the other companies, they were like, yeah, well, if it was us over there, it would have been different, right?
No shit.
And they were basically saying, like, how did you guys screw up so bad that many people got killed? And what most of us, this is what happened to me. Most of us developed this bunker mentality. Like, I can't talk about this with anybody. I can't tell my family. I can't tell my friends. I can't even tell other Rangers about it because they're all thinking if it was me, it would have went down differently.
Dude, that's messed up.
It wasn't until Mark Bowden wrote the book Black Hawk Down that the opinion of the battle changed, and that took 5 years.
Wow.
The whole world changed their opinion about this, but for 5 years, nobody talked about it. Nobody wanted to talk about it.
That's got to be hard to even put into words the amount of frustration that you had to have felt.
You know this. As a warrior, I don't need awards. I don't need decorations. All I need is for America to say, we're proud of you. Yeah. That's all I need. Yeah. And what I heard was, we're not proud of you. You embarrassed us. You let us down for 5 years. And then it was almost, I wanted to laugh at how fickle the public is, because when Black Hawk Down comes out, everybody's like, you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. No, I'm actually not the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it wasn't that much of a disaster. It was what it was. And until Black Hawk Down came out, the opinion didn't change. Yeah. So I just didn't talk about it to anybody.
Man, that's
only to my buddies that were there, because they're the only ones that would get it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's remarkable, truly remarkable. You said that the Silver Star got upgraded?
Yeah. So I came back with a Bronze Star with V Device for Valor. And about a year ago, 28 years later, the medal was upgraded to Silver Star. Not just me, but there was about 20 of us whose awards were upgraded to, the next or several layers higher. And I said at an interview at that big award ceremony, like, I don't deserve the Silver Star, but there are plenty of dudes around me who do. And what's unfortunate is they had to wait 28 years to get the credit that they deserve, because they deserved it, man. They deserved it the next day.
Yeah. Wow. So what was the transformation between going through all of that and then ultimately going into the ministry as it relates to special operations, and how does that work? I mean,
I'll be really brief on this one. So when I'm rolling back out in the city streets in Somalia, getting ready to go to the Durant crash site, my second time back out in the city, I am 100% sure I'm going to die. No doubt about it. But I got no choice, man. I signed up for this. Those guys that are in the city streets, they're waiting on me, and I pledged my life in the Ranger Creed to these guys, man. I can't let them down. And at that moment, I have this rock solid faith. And I just simply kind of surrender my life and my future to God. Like, God, I know I'm going to die, but I'm putting it all in your hands. Like,
were you, air quotes, religious prior to that?
Yeah. Very, very strongly religious. And my buddies knew that. But before I got ready to roll back out in the city streets, I just got to this moment where, like, here it is. Tonight's the night, God. I know it's going to be tonight, and I'm ready. Basically, in my heart, I'm ready to go. And that moment, like, it was like a light switch just flipped, and I felt this overwhelming sense of peace. And I mean, all night long, bullets landed right next to me, dudes getting hit all around me, and I'm totally at peace because I'm ready to go. In fact, when I walked away the next day without a scratch on me, I was like, I don't get it, God. I thought we had a deal. I thought tonight was the night. Like, what happened? Did I get this wrong? So I come back from Somalia, and I start to get this gnawing in my stomach, like, I can't get rid of this thing. I think God wants me to do something different. And I love being an Army Ranger. I wanted to do this until they kicked me out of the Army. Like, that's all I want to do is kick in doors and kill bad guys. And I went to talk to my chaplain, asked him the same two questions. I went to my pastor of my church, asked him the exact same two questions in the same week, and basically said, I don't know what this is, but I think maybe God is calling me into the ministry. First question, how do you know? Second question, what do I do next? Both of them fell to the floor, had to pick themselves up and say, are you serious right now? And I'm like, I think so. And they both said, well, listen, man, you joined while you were still in high school. You got to go get some school and you got to figure this thing out.
You got to go to Bible college.
Yeah. So I, no kidding, stayed in the Ranger Regiment as an NCO and knocked out a degree and then went off to school before coming back in. I had a break in service and came back on active duty as an Army chaplain.
And so are your Afghan and Iraq deployments all as chaplain?
All of them as a chaplain, yeah.
Before we get into that, I'm curious, the schooling process for theology, is that what your degree is?
Yeah. It's no joke.
Well, I can only imagine. How much of it could you kind of Reader's Digest the breakdown of what you actually learn?
Yeah, so the government requires, and this is a good thing, don't get me wrong, about 9 to 10 years worth of preparation to become an Army chaplain. That's why, well, military chaplains of all branches of the service, that's why they're usually old guys and old gals before they even show up. So you have to have a 4-year undergraduate degree. You have to have a 3-year master's degree, and you can't fast track it. If you have a degree that can be done in 2.5 years, well, you're going to have to add an extra half a year's worth of courses in there.
No University of Phoenix online business.
And you need to do about 2 years worth of full-time work at a church before you can even apply. So in my case, I have 13 years of active duty as an enlisted guy while I'm trying to go through this pipeline and eventually have a break in service, serve in a church, apply, come back on to active duty. Most of the education is designed to help you figure out how philosophy, theology, in my denominational practices, a little bit about the Bible, a lot about, history, and the master's, I'm putting air quotes around the word master's degree. I have a master's of divinity. That word masters used to be, we have now truly made you a master in religion, and now you're ready for anything. But it takes you 3 additional years. There are guys that got a PhD with less training than I got in that 3-year master's. But the idea here is we're going to make you a master, and you're going to be ready for whatever they throw at you when you step into that role.
Yeah. During that schooling process, from a history standpoint, and I know, or I guess I don't know, I'm assuming that depending on where you get your degree from, it's obviously going to vary somewhat, but how much attention is paid to other religions during that? Some
denominations, the degree itself is really dictated by your denomination. Some denominations do a good job of that. Other denominations don't even touch it. They don't even want you to think about anybody else. So
what is yours in?
Yeah, mine is, I'm a Southern Baptist guy, and I went to a Southern Baptist seminary. I went to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, and they give a little bit of explanation of where everybody else is, but they did a really good job of saying, listen, most of you guys don't even understand where you are. So I wish we could spend a lot of time helping you figure out what everybody else thinks, but we're going to really help you figure out where you are and how you think. And then you do the research on your own after you leave here and figure out where everybody else is on this.
Yeah. From a history standpoint, is it pretty detailed when do they go through from the time Jesus was crucified through all of the different, evolutions and what it meant, and did you get the impression either then or now looking back on it that it's as unbiased as it can be?
Yeah. So I really learned to love church history. There was a lot of courses in church history that I had to take, and they covered all of it. Hey, let us tell you a lot about the history before the time of Jesus. Let us tell you about some of the history that was going on, world history during the time of Jesus. But most of it was, let me tell you about how the faith has kind of changed but what has impacted over the last 2,000 years in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, and how much it's different, or how much denominations have changed as a result of this. My denomination did a really good job of kind of training me. But I love that stuff, so I read it, literally, I get up and I read it every day. I still read church history every day.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I'm full disclosure, I'm not a particularly religious guy. I grew up, in Iowa, real heavy Lutheran. Did a lot of pretty extensive. Did the 3-year confirmation process, the whole thing. Even the first couple of years in the military was, what you would call a pretty religious person. But I, while saying that I'm not particularly religious now or anymore, I still find religion in all walks of life and historically as it relates to human beings fascinating, and not in a trivial or mocking way. Right. I mean, I respect everybody for their opinions. Like I said, I've had a lot of guys on here that are as good a men as I know, and they are hyper faithful, and I have a truckload of respect for all of them, and I would never disrespect any of that. Is it possible to, in a couple of minutes, kind of hyper reduce Christianity from its inception to now?
Yeah, it's going to be really generalizations, and generalizations can get you in a lot of trouble because there's so much more to the story. But you have one faith that starts off at Jesus's death and resurrection. It's considered the Catholic faith, and the word Catholic I'm using here is capital C Catholic, meaning all people are the same, universal. That's what Catholic means, universal faith. After a few hundred years, the faith starts to split, and a little bit of that faith becomes Central Europe, Rome, and the Roman influence at 300, 400 AD. And then you have some very faithful dudes that are in Africa that are starting to develop a little bit of a different approach. And the faith goes through a split, and Central Asia, especially Turkey at this time, the Ottoman Empire, that Christian faith starts to look a little bit different than the Western. So you have this, what's called the Great Schism, the separation between the Eastern Christian faith and the Western Christian faith. The Eastern or the Western faith follows a pope who is in Rome and kind of the head of the whole, what's supposed to be universal church. But the Eastern faith is based out of Constantinople. And they're saying, you know what? I don't know that guy is what he's saying is exactly what we're reading in the Bible. So they go in a slightly different direction. And it stays like that literally from about, I think it would be about 1200 AD by the time you have the Great Schism. And it stays like that for hundreds of years until a dude by the name of Martin Luther, who's in the West, says, man, I'm looking at the Bible and I'm listening to what they're saying and it ain't lining up. And I'm a priest and a theologian. And he starts to write down, like he's taking notes, and he's like, I don't see this in the Bible, and I don't think this is lining up. And as I think about it, this right here doesn't seem right. And he writes down 95 problems with what I'm seeing here and what I'm hearing.
Is that where Jay-Z got the 99 problems?
Yeah, that's that. So no kidding, October 31st, 1517, this Roman Catholic priest by the name of Martin Luther nails these 95 problems, called his 95 Thesis, to the door of a church. And it's his way of saying, hey, I need this to go to the Pope and tell him we got some problems here. And now the church has to decide, like, are we willing to change, or are we willing to even admit what this priest is saying? There might be some truth to this. And in a period of few years and a lot of problems, the church decides, yeah, we don't care what this guy says. We're going to do our thing anyway and blow off those 95 Theses, Martin Luther's 95 Theses. And he very reluctantly says, well, if you guys are not even willing to entertain the discussion, then I got to go in another direction. And that starts what becomes known as the Protestant Reformation, where the Protestant denominations separate from the Catholic Church, and all of the other myriad of denominations that you see out there, they basically fall into one of those two camps. And to just be honest with you, Mike, man, I don't put stock in any denomination, not mine, not anybody else's. As I look over history, I think, man, those denominations have done a lot more harm than good. And basically all they're doing is trying to steal people from one faith, air quotes, to another one, when what Jesus really came to do is to just try to change people from the inside out. So I don't talk about denominations. I don't make a big deal. I pastor a church. We don't even mention denominations in my church because it feels like it does more damage than it does good.
Yeah.